Hello, and welcome to the Serpent's Lair. My name is Sami, psychoanalytic psychotherapist and explorer of the witch in cinema, history, folklore, from the psychoanalytic viewpoint. Today I'm talking about dance, and the episode is a bit different than usual. Topics are still the same. First about witch trial history and dancing there. Then I return to the mythology of Orestes and Erinyes. Through that I will present the idea of binding in spells and curses in history. After that I will talk about the remake of Suspiria from the year 2018, and I will mention also some other movies where the dance and also witches are seen. Today's topic is also very personal. My mother did a lot of dance choreographies, so as a child I have been sitting a lot watching dance practices and performances. I even joined to her version of George Orwell's 1984, but not as a dancer. I don't dance, partly perhaps because of my mother, and she was a dancer, so I had to find some other ways to express myself, and I'm doing it also here. The closest connection to dance have been that I have played music for the dancers. I have worked as a music therapist, and nowadays I am practicing psychoanalytic psychotherapy. But I have to say that the dance was not only a positive thing in my life. I felt as an outsider, and therefore I still have to explore it. I believe therapy is a lot like dancing together, helping people to express themselves, studying their mind and also bodies, trying to find out what kind of psychological traumas they have in their mind and bodies. That could affect into their way of communication in interaction with others and capability to express their inner world more freely. Like in the dance, reflecting and mirroring are important things. Listening to music and even watching dance activate areas of movement in our brains. In the dance therapy, dance can be, among many other things, the agent of change. However, today I'm concentrating on inability to change, repetition, and inflexible mind, so-called fixations. In the end, I am making references to the George Orwell's book 1984 and dance and ballet made from it. Find me in social media under the name Soul Sanitarium, and I recommend to watch this in YouTube. Overall, the dance, witches, and harsh Superego are in the center of this episode. Serpent's Lair. Here is the myth. The witches would form a circle facing outwards and dance around a witch standing bent over, her head touching the ground, with a candle stuck in her anus to serve as illumination. The dance would become a frantic and erotic orgy in which all things, including sodomy and incest, were permitted. This was from Norman Cohn, 1975. It is important to note that witches' coven was thought of as collectivity in every respect they represent a collective inversion of Christianity. These kind of cults existed only in the fantastic minds. You should also remember that witch trials happened in the early modern times. Ancient ritual cults, if there were any, were disappeared, and perhaps only local folk festivities and folk tales remained. These fantasies have a strong connection to the Western Christian world. See more from Norman Cohn. For example, maypole dance is common in many nations. Music and dance belonged inseparably together. In some languages, there is not even a separate word for music and dance. In Sweden and also in the coast of Finland, there is no maypole, it is a midsummer pole. For all the people, dance has of course been also a way to be close to an interesting person, and weddings are one of the oldest forms of this culture, in addition to the annual celebrations. Dance can be sensual and even openly sexual. New life requires the power of procreation and the fertile ability to give birth to life. Maturation or exaggeration and dramatization is characterized in fertility rituals. Symbols of sexuality were used against evil spirits and misfortune. This folk magic was also used in cultivation. In Finland, a farmer may put a wedding ring on his finger when he starts sowing seeds. Fertility magic folk traditions are perhaps mixed in those fantasies of witches dancing in the woods. There is actually no point assuming that dance could have something to do with curses. For example, in Asia, the history of art dance is thousands of years old. In tribal cultures, dance and music was and still is appropriate way to negotiate with gods. Most tribes perform in dances, songs, and music on religious festivals, births, death, marriage ceremonies, and other festivities. They perform dances individually or collectively, in traditional dresses along with their own songs. The whole community could take part in the ritual dance. Trance, on the other hand, was often the prerogative of holy men. God's death and rebirth are also associated with fertility rituals. Ritual is used to eliminate things that threaten the world order, such as sickness. The order is restored. In Europe, the development of art dance began from the first in ballet. The pioneering countries in art dance were France and Italy. The ballet was initially a very well defined series of movements. It took a long time before the art dance could be expressing an idea or emotion, releasing energy, or simply taking delight in the movement itself. Of course, the dance has also included an entertaining aspect, the physical abilities of an actor or dancer, or a new way of presenting a familiar plot and familiar individuals have fascinated people for thousands of years. As said, in the early days of Western art, dance ballet was disciplined and regulated and left very little room for self expression. It was not until the turn of the 20th century that modern art dance took its first steps. Isadora Duncan danced barefoot. She was interested in Greek antiquity, including the Furies. Before World War II, modern dance was influenced by Mary Wigman and Rudolf Laban in particular. Ausdruckstanz meant that the primary function of the dance was to give shape to emotions and inner experiences. The expression of personal feelings in dance was banned along with psychoanalysis, and many dancers and psychoanalysts fled to America. I'm talking about Nazi Germany.
Und unser niemals mehr abzuändern Entschluss. Es soll aber aus diesen Opfern heraus bei uns die Entschlossenheit kommen, dir eins mit den Verantwortlichen an diesen Opfern ein unerbittliches Gericht zu halten.
Wigman and Pina Bausch have been mentioned as a model for the Madame Blanc in Suspiria 2018. Modern dance diversified in the 1980s. Non-European influences began to show more clearly. Dancing is increasingly being done in public places, not just in a dance theater. The content of the dance is more and more important, not just distinctiveness. However, classics like the Swan Lake Ballet have remained popular with the general public. Dancing is also a way to get to know different cultures. Flamenco, Latin dances, folk dances, etc. For many, dance is an exercise and a way to take care of their health. Up and lead the dance of fate, lift the sun that mortals hate, tell what rights are ours on earth, overall on human birth. Swift or foot to avenge are we, he whose hands are clean and pure. Not our wrath to dread hath he, calm his cloudless days endure, but the man that seeks to hide like him, his gore-beviewed hands witness to them that died, the blood avengers at his side, the Furies troop forever stands. This was translated by Henry Hart Millman in 1893. It was the dance of the Erinyes in Aeschylus' Eumenides. It has also been seen as a ballet. 20th century Soviet composer Yuri Alexandrovich Falik composed a one-act ballet, Oresteia. There is a dance of Furies. But let's return to the Aeschylus text. Is it here that the dance and this song are in the form of a curse? It might be so, but perhaps we should dig a little bit deeper first. According to Ogden, 1999, an example of the sort of verbal curse that precede written curses may be found in the binding song Hymnos Desmios, sung by the Furies in Aeschylus' Eumenides. There is some debate as to how central the principal innovation of the cursed tablets writing was to their magical identity. It is hard to believe that kind of voodoo dolls had been used without accompanying verbal curses. Usually the magic doesn't work without ritual. Song of the Erinyes is closely related to a specific kind of curse tablet used to affect the outcome of law cases in Athens at early as 5th century BC. Curse tablets or deficciones have been unearthed in every corner of the Greco-Roman world. In the classical period, they are usually inscribed sheets or lead, which have been folded up or rolled, pierced with an iron nail, and then buried with the corpse of one of the untimely dead. Their simplest texts are the names of persons to be cursed by fixing the names of the victims with a nail. More than 1,600 tablets are currently known. Most are in Greek. These kind of curses can be divided into 3 categories. 1. Erotic curses, 2. Judicial curses, and 3. Circus curses. In here the circus means gladiators and chariot races. Judicial curse tablets seem to have been written without exception prior to the final outcome of the trial. More specifically, they are attempts at binding the opponent's ability to think clearly and speak effectively in court, just like in the movie Devil's Advocate. The Erinyes attempt to bind the wits of their opponent in order to prevent him from mounting a strong defense. Although the performance of the Oresteia predates the first appearance of Attic judicial curses by more than half a century, it is not unreasonable to suppose that purely oral binding curses like the Erinyes binding song existed prior to the writing curse tablets and were a common enough practice in 5th century Athens for Aeschylus to assume that his theatre audience would understand the Erinyes action as the judicial curse. So this might be just a way to present the curse by using the language in theatre at those times. In the end, Erinyes binding spell fails, they lose the case, and Orestes is set free. It is interesting how they give up and accept this new idea to be protectors of the peoples of Athens.
At the beginning, she gave me things: perfect balance, perfect sleep. Oh, she wants to get inside of me. I can feel her. Oh, she can see me.
When you dance the dance of another, you make yourself in the image of its creator.
I feel like I'm not even here yet. The dumplex incredible. 1, 2, 3. The way she transmits her work.
You have to decide, what is it you want to be for this company?
The idea for the dance choreography came from Damien Jallet, who was asked for the movie. Original Le Méduse was performed in Louvre Museum. In French, être méduse means literally to be paralyzed by stupefaction. It involves the notion of gaze and is one of the rare verbs to directly derived from a myth, and in this case the myth of Medusa. It has interesting connection to my topic because some dance therapists, and I also think that the superego problems can be seen from the body. For example, the shame we have prevents us from moving freely. We are not capable to express ourselves. That part is in kind of paralysis.
You're making some kind of deal with them. I don't know what you're talking about. It's all a mess. The one out there. The one in here. The one that's coming.
I think the theme of binding curse is interesting in the Suspiria. The net or spider's web binds everybody under the spell or delusion that prevents them to see or move. I had never seen Dakota Johnson in any other movie, so for me her performance came out from nowhere and it was so skilled and beautiful. However, the idea of triple roles of Tilda Swinton, who I also admire a lot, did not work for me. According to Britt Hayes 2018, the therapist, played also by Tilda Swinton, represents a superego, and Marcos represents id. The ego then should be Madame Blanc, all played by Tilda Swinton. I don't think that using this very classical theory is so successfully depicted. On the other hand, Mother Suspirium is perhaps the true primitive superego here. Also, I didn't like the ending when Mother Suspiriorum opens up her chest and reveals herself as monstrous feminine. Perhaps less could be more in this case.
Compañía de danza Marcos presenta folk.
Anyway, The ideology, I think, was in the main focus in this movie. I've used here the article of Sam Moore in Cinepunks 2019 and Ideology and Psychoanalysis by Leslie Chapman 2001. The group RAF, the Red Army faction, was motivated by leftist political concerns and the perceived failure of their parents' generation to confront Germany's Nazi past. The RAF has been held responsible for 34 deaths. Suspiria interrogates the rise of fascism and the impact of extreme ideologies. Ideology, especially the dominant ideology, has a hidden influence on the way people live, act, and think about the conditions of their lives and activities. Dr. Joseph Klemperer even compares the dance company to the Reich. He argues in the movie that both organizations have insignia and esoteric rituals. The psychotherapist or psychoanalyst is a relic from the past, sentimentality, the warning act, and presented as an ideology too. There is a theme of literally giving up a body so that someone else can control it. Susie Bannon creates Lebensraum, living space, by killing Olga. Madame Blanc is repeating her work in Volk and represents it as a new work of art. Climax of the film is like political regime change in the guise of body horror. A literally violent upheaval and replacement of the old order with the new one. This parallels the atmosphere of political upheaval and potentially violent change that runs in the German autumn background of the film. The 1977 was called German Autumn.
You look afraid.
The history of Germany in the times between World War I and World War II is often portrayed as that of a great and cultured people falling under the spell of a corrupt regime. And the question is then asked, how could this have happened? Writers such as Fischer and Goldhagen, however, suggest that it happened quite simply because there was already something very rotten at the core of this society, and all it took was trauma of military defeat and socio-economic chaos to bring this to the surface. Suspiria interrogates the rise of fascism and the impact of extreme ideologies. Only the new generation can be free from the old. The problem is, however, that it is just a new ideology. I just watched the Northern Ballet version of Orwell's 1984 by Jonathan Watkins. It was made in 2015. It was so funny to watch for me because of the similarities for my mother's version, Julia and Winston, that was made in 1984 actually to 95. It was a non-professional high school and junior high school production, but it was also performed in few competitions and the real theater in Helsinki. The social structure of George Orwell's 1984 is not based on Freud's map of the mind, but there are a lot of similarities, like the struggles between the id, the ego, and the superego. The minds of these individuals living in this society are trained to think a certain way. In the eyes of political party, the main male character, Winston, is seen as one that has a mental disorder. This kind of political diagnosis was seen also in the real life in certain countries. Winston's mind is considered cured in the moment that he turns on the one person he truly loves. Society is essentially an imposition on individual and ultimately selfish interests. An imposition which is tolerated most of the time as the price for a relatively secure existence. Psychoanalyst Heinz Kohut believed individuals need people who will make them feel calm and comfortable. To Kohut, idealization in childhood is a healthy mechanism. According to Otto Kernberg, when viewing people as all good, the individual is said to be using the defense mechanism of idealization. When viewing people as all bad, the individual employs devaluation. In the childhood, this kind of split is normal. During the childhood development stage, individuals become capable of perceiving others as complex structures containing both good and bad components.
And we know there was another bomb in Kreuzberg last night. She wouldn't do that. She wanted to live her beliefs. Who doesn't admire that? And there's so much to change in the world. If she wants to live in a cellar filling bottles with petrol, that's her choice. And who won't be heartbroken if she's shot by police? You will everything.
Slavoj Zizek has become one of the foremost proponents of what might be described as a post-Lacanian theory of ideology. According to him, it is a social reality itself of whose essence its participants are unaware. In other words, people act as if they did not know, even if they think they do know. It is just another form of delusion. Zizek used the example of anti-Semitism to illustrate that rational thought is incapable of breaking the ideological fantasy. I would like to compare this that the plots of the devil are also a good example of this. One would not believe that witchcraft can be right the next door to us because they are like us. this is where the devil's cunning lies, because we cannot immediately see these things, but they are witches. This is well represented in Suspiria. In the individual level of the human mind is full of conflicting sides. This feels like chaos. Freud gave the names id, ego, and superego to these different sides to make them easier to understand. Born in Vienna, Otto Kernberg and his family fled Nazi Germany in 1939, immigrating to Chile. He studied biology and medicine, and afterwards psychiatry and psychoanalysis with the Chilean Psychoanalytic Society. He first came to the US, New York, in 1959. Everybody in the times of witch trials were not borderline patients. However, there are similar forces in all of us, and in the crisis situations or when we feel threatened, we can easily start to see the world as black and white, and we could even have paranoid thinking. Why? One explanation is that these primitive forces are so powerful that they win in the group situation. According to Otto Kernberg, there is impressive clinical evidence that regardless of the degree of maturity and psychological integration of the individual, small, closed, unstructured groups, as well as large groups with the minimal structure and no clearly defined task relating that group to its environment, tend to bring about an immediate regression toward the activation of defensive operations and interpersonal processes that reflect primitive object relations. There is a concept called primitive superego. This concept was first presented by British psychoanalyst James Strachey. This theory identifies primitive superego as an early form of superego that is the result of the exposure to the particularly harsh or terrifying objects. In severe superego pathology, the concern for oneself and for one's relation to others is missing. In other words, moral self-evaluation, according to Kernberg.
I had the craziest dream last night about a girl who was turned into a swan, but her prince falls for the wrong girl and she kills herself. He promised to feature me more this season.
Well, he should. You've been there long enough. And you're the most dedicated dancer in the company.
Our new Swan Queen, the exquisite Nina Sayers.
And Lily, you're gonna be amazing.
Watch the way she moves. Sensual. She's not faking it. Seduce us! Attack it! Attack it! Come on!
Where'd you get these?
It's nothing.
You sweet girl.
Feel my touch. Respond to it.
Soap was hot for teacher. I don't want to talk about that.
You really need to relax.
It's the role, isn't it? It's all this pressure. I knew it'd be too much. I knew it.
What's she doing here? You made me your alternate.
The only person standing in your way is you.
In the movie The Black Swan, there is a fantasy part where the separation individuation process is beautifully depicted. The problem is that it is only in a fantasy. and it is not tolerated. In the movie, Nina's mother, or you can see it also as a mother introject, mother tries to restrain Nina from living independently. She controls Nina as if she was still a child and imposes her morals on Nina. Nina starts to explore the world and first returns back to the mother home. She is trying to grow her own wings, but Nina's mind fractures. She becomes paranoid, even omnipotent, and also masochistic. She becomes attached to the pain and finally becomes self-destructive. In Otto Kernberg's words, the superego features of the depressive masochistic personality are reflected in a tendency to be excessively serious, responsible, and concerned about work performance and responsibilities. In the non-narcissistic cases, these individuals show an abnormal vulnerability to being disappointed by others, and they may go out of their way to obtain sympathy and love. However, vicious cycles of excessive demandingness, feelings of rejection, and unconscious tendency to make others feel guilty, and consequent actual rejection from others may spiral into severe problems in intimate relations and also trigger depression connected to loss of love. Kernberg, 1988. And for the end, the lack of integration of superego functions, the reprojection of primitive superego precursors in the form of paranoid traits and the tolerance of contradictory behaviors, in fact the rationalization of aggressive behaviors, all illustrate the corruption of superego functions in marked contrast to the rigid superego integration of the depressive masochistic personality disorder. I'm soon going to end this episode. Thank you for listening. I appreciate if you could like this episode in different social media. And please push the subscribe button so that you don't miss any coming episodes. Aeschylus draws his contrast between anarchy and despotism through the main characters in his play Erinyes. He presents a new social order. The necessity of psychoanalysis engaging with the human leads to its involvement with the foundations of societal values. The Freudian superego assumes the responsibility of legislator, judge, Supreme Court, attorney for the id, public persecutor, and even grief counselor. But it also sometimes serves as vigilante. As witch historian Brian Levack, 1987, has put it, every culture has been known to generate myths about persons who are a threat to the society. for the end, I will read the sources. Christopher A. Faraone, 1985. Aeschylus and Attic Jurical Curse Tablets, the Journal of Christopher A. Faraone, 1985. Aeschylus and Attic Juridical Curse Tablets, the Journal of Hellenic Studies, Volume 105. Norman Cohn, 1975, Europe's Inner Demons. Haukinen, Laristo, Makkonen, etc. 1992. Taidetanssi Suomessa, Helsinki. Suomen tanssialan keskusliitto ry ja Tanssin tiedotuskeskus. Brian Levack, 1987, The Witch Hunt in Early Modern Europe. Miettinen Jukka O, 1987, Jumalia, sankareita, demoneja, Helsinki, Teatterikorkeakoulu. Nenonen Marko, 1992, Noituus, taikuus ja noita vainot, Helsinki, SHS. Nenonen Marko, 2007, Noita vainot Euroopassa, Jyväskylä, Ateena. Ogden Daniel, 1999, Binding Spells, Curse Tablets and Voodoo Dolls in Greek and Roman Worlds, in the book Ankarlu and Clark, edited Witchcraft and Magic in Europe, Ancient Greece and Rome. Citation, 15th of April 2022, Law and Psychoanalysis. Kernberg Otto, 1988, Clinical Dimensions of Masochism, Journal of American Psychoanalysis Association. Kernberg Otto, 1988, Clinical Dimensions of Masochism, and Kernberg, the 3 books can be seen in YouTube video of mine and some of the other sources that I have not mentioned here. Thank you. Bye bye.